my next guest. His name is Devon Eriksen, and he is the author of the science fiction book Theft of Fire. He's joining us live right now. Good morning, Devon.
Good morning.
Glad to have
Thank
you
you for
here.
having me on.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, Devon. I've been reading your tweets of the past day. Boy, you've really caught fire over at X.com with some of your takes. And it seems that you and I appear to come from, we're cut from the same ideological cloth. So you're definitely amongst friends here on the Wake Up America show, where we cherish liberty and limited government. But when it comes to the cultural issues, the question is, how does a libertarian get involved in the culture war, if you will? Is it important? I think the answer is yes. It seems that you would likely agree with your recent take
Yeah.
on JK Rowling. Here's my question. I've been enjoying seeing her taking more what you might consider conservative or libertarian takes when it comes to trans women and men's sports, and her takes on biological females. But you seem to not be thinking, "Oh, it's great that she's joining our side," so much as you're sort of enjoying maybe a little bit of Schadenfreude here, or seeing her hoisted by her own petard. Can you explain your take on the J.K. Rowling situation for us?
Yeah, well, as a science fiction writer, sort of my job is to speculate about the future, is sort of what's going to happen if we build this technology, what's going to happen if we build that technology, what is the future going to be like? And so we tend to sort of think ahead of these kinds of technological and social trends. And, one of the things that I notice is that a lot of people who are advocates don't really think about the second and third order effects of what they're doing. Essentially, they throw something sharp and heavy up in the air, and then they're surprised that their head is bleeding and it hurts so much. And so that's more or less what is starting to happen with feminism, because as I laid out, a lot of the things that are happening to women now, which they do not like very much, are a consequence of some of the things that the feminists started doing in the 70s. And that has these sort of second, third order, higher order effects that have this kind of fallout. And it's actually very nice to see, because oftentimes social ills will only get addressed when they start to harm women. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you were the ones who said that gender is a social construct and we need to start treating men and women the same. And this was your way of insisting that all the rewards of the responsibilities of masculinity were actually male privileges. So you should just have them. And now, okay, well, that works in reverse too. And men are putting on dresses and insisting that they be given all the rewards of femininity. So it's good to see, but that doesn't make the feminists who are now noticing that they're being hurt by this our friends, because they still have the same agenda. So the way I put it is that TERFs and wokies both hate me. So why would I do anything but eat popcorn and laugh as they fight each other?
Yeah, I keep getting a lot of friends on the right, my lady friends who are on the right, will tell me things like, we need men to step up. We need men to step up in this fight, and we need more men to stop it. These men are going out there, they're injuring these women out in the soccer fields. And I just say, absolutely not. I'm not getting canceled for you. I'm not losing my job or my revenue or my income for you. I'm certainly not going to go out and go and fight in front of a school board just so that you can throw me to the wolves later. Because feminism is not an exclusively liberal ideology. There are plenty of feminists on the right who are happy to circle the wagons as soon as it comes time to pay
Oh,
for child
yes.
support, aren't
Yeah,
there, Devin?
yeah, yeah. Well, it's one of the things that a lot of conservative women did when feminism started dominating the social discourse, was They barred their doors. They homeschooled their sons. They stayed faithful and respectful to their husbands. And essentially, what they did was circle the wagons and leave millions upon millions of little boys in the darkness outside. And now those little boys have grown up broken and they are doing things. And they say, hey, we weren't the problem. Well, yes, but you did nothing to stop the problem. And again, they may not realize that in these kinds of arguments, in these kinds of political arguments, their voices, on account of being women and being so much able to garner more sympathy, their voices are louder and they are more powerful in these kinds of discussions than men are.
Yeah, on the
So,
one hand, Devin, they'll say, "Well, we need men to step up and take leadership roles," and then on the other hand, they say, "We need fewer male voices in this space. We need more
yeah,
women on the corporate boards, et cetera, et
yeah,
cetera."
yeah.
For those who might just be tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Petersen. I'm speaking to author Devon Eriksen. He's a science fiction author, and his new book is Theft of Fire. He's joining us live right now, talking a little bit about JK Rowling being canceled by the left. Now, in your piece, or I guess your tweet over on
Mm.
X, you had posted that JK Rowling, even though she's waking up to what the monster is that the left has become, you say that she still doesn't get it. Why do you say
Oh,
that?
yeah. Yeah. Well, she doesn't understand that this is a consequence of a movement that she supported and participated in. And, these men in dresses are simply doing to women what feminists did to men. So, in a sense, feminists are being punished not only for their sins, but actually being punished by their sins. And because they abolish the principle that the sexes are different and you treat them different, and now you say gender is a social construct, and now you have no defense when somebody puts on a dress and says I am a woman. And that's the part she still doesn't understand, is that what is being done to her with certain tactics is simply what she did to men with the same tactics, coming along for their spaces that were organized their way to cater to them and saying, there is value here. You must let us in. You have no right to keep us out. Where the men were saying, we built this space. It serves our needs. It keeps us safe. It helps us grow. And this is the same argument that is being held today. And the only difference now, the only reason she's objecting is that is now happening to her.
Yes, exactly. Once she is being socially ostracized and being pushed down the pecking order, then all of a sudden, so things need to change. One of my favorite little thought experiments I like to engage in with some of my conservative and libertarian female friends is to ask them if they would prefer equality or special treatment slash chivalry. They will almost always answer that if they had to choose, they would prefer equality, although, of course, they would rather have their cake and eat it too in such a situation. But then, of course, I followed up with a question like, so if we're on the Titanic and it's going down, you're not running for the lifeboats, you're not tying your hair up into pigtails, you're not running for the exits, because the truth is that what it seems feminism has made is it wants to grant rights without the accompanying responsibilities that come with those rights. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think that rights is maybe the wrong word to use. I think that what we have is we have sort of rights that everybody has, such as you have property rights and so forth, and we honor those for both sexes.
Well, I would
But
say
then,
pause for just a moment, Devin.
yeah,
I would say in the context of perhaps voting and then being
uh-huh.
required to register for the selective service.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then you have certain responsibilities which have rewards. And when you start pointing at men and saying, the rewards for fulfilling your responsibilities are not really rewards at all. They're not a payoff. They're just little perks that you get because you're favored for being male, and we deserve those too. It's it's a bit like you build a house, you build a kitchen, you start cooking some food, and then somebody shows up and knocks on the door and says, "When's dinner?" Men had an awful lot of things when there was a division between sex roles because men built those things. All of these male only golf clubs where business was supposedly discussed. Well, it was business involving the businesses that those men had built, and it was business involving the money that they had earned. So why are they obligated to include others in what they have built unless they want to?
Devin, you say that men have very little incentive to help women with these problems, to help people like JK Rowling. Why is that?
I don't feel that there's a lot of reciprocity because what is happening to women now was happening to men 40, 50 years earlier. And I shouldn't just say men, I should say like little boys, like 6-year-old children. Like, you no longer have male spaces for them. They can no longer be raised in the way that men are supposed to be raised. They are being put in institutional government schools run by women, expected to act like little girls, dosed with methamphetamine if they dare to act like boys. And then, 40 years later, 30 years later, they become adults, and women come along and say, help us, our private spaces are being violated. And the answer is like, well, where was your movement when these were little boys and the feminists were attacking them? Where were you then?
So one of the things I'm noticing in the chat is, of course, not everybody is agreeing with us, and they're saying
Oh yeah.
things. They're saying things like, "Listen to the men whining. If men had had any balls in the first place, we wouldn't have been in this situation." How would you respond to this female shaming tactic
Well,
being
I
thrown at you?
wouldn't. I wouldn't because I no longer care what you think. I no longer care what you think. When you say, "Oh, you are whining, you are a weak male," it's like what you're essentially saying is agree with me or I will withhold my good opinion from you. Well, I don't want your good opinion. It does nothing for me. It doesn't profit me at all. I'm not scared of you disapproving of me. I don't need your approval. You do nothing for me. You are useless to me. Go ahead and disapprove. Bye.
Same thing. I could give a crap. But when it comes to the question of females competing against biological males in sports,
Uh-huh.
I'm conflicted, Devin. I'm getting
Mhm.
ready to have my first child, and it's going to be
Uh-huh.
a girl. And
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking
Yes.
about a scenario where she wants to play
Yes.
soccer, and she's
Uh-huh.
getting her skull crushed by a biological male
Uh-huh.
on the field. On one hand, Devin, I don't think that I think it's ridiculous and dangerous to have this
Yeah.
situation. On the other hand, part of me thinks that democracy is the theory that the common man deserves what he wants, gets what he deserves, good and hard in some sense. Like,
Well,
what's your take on the
uh-huh.
whole? Should we allow it to happen, and then finally the women will cry out after their daughters have just a streak of blood has been left on the pitches, the soccer
Well,
fields? How should we deal with this?
the real tragedy here is that democracy is sort of collectivist. So it doesn't make people get what they deserve. It makes individual people get what everybody deserves. So what's happening to women is what feminists deserve. And you notice that these two terms, women and feminists, are not synonymous. So, the feminists threw something sharp and heavy up in the air, and it's landing on a lot of people who are not personally responsible for what happened. It's landing on women who never agreed with this. It's landing on their, not on them, but on their daughters and granddaughters. And that's maybe one of the flaws in democracy, is that you have this situation where, three wolves and a sheep are voting on what's for dinner. So obviously, when you set collective policy at the highest levels, even if you set it democratically, there's going to be a lot of splash damage, and a lot of innocent people will get hurt, and that is tragic. And the schadenfreude of watching feminists get what they deserve doesn't take anything away from that. You can feel these two feelings simultaneously. But at the same point, the only way that anything is going to change is if women start saying, hey, this is hurting me. Because when men say, hey, this is hurting me, we hear a lot of clucking about how someone is whining and being weak. We just heard it here on a very conservative show. It's reflexive, it's instinctive. Women have contempt for weak men. And any man who complains, regardless of whether he's complaining on behalf of himself or lots of little boys, is seen as weak. So the only way we can get past this and start to get the general population to listen is if women start saying, hey, ow, I'm hurting. So, it's tragic that it happens to innocent people, but it happening to innocent people and people noticing that is the only way that we're going to get some momentum on this issue.
This is good stuff. I'm speaking to author Devon Eriksen. He's a science fiction author of the new book series, Theft of Fire. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we do, I'd like to ask you to do us a solid. Click that like button if you're enjoying that content that you're hearing today. And if you'd like to come back and join us, the Wake Up America show streams live every Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. So click the follow button over there on Rumble and come back and join us regularly so you can hear more great interviews like the one you're hearing right now. Devon, I've got your book pulled up on the screen here, Theft of Fire, Orbital Space. You're getting rave reviews over at Amazon.com. We got the picture pulled up there so people who can see it and want to grab a copy can do so. Tell us a little bit about your latest novel.
Well, I missed the science fiction we used to have back in the 80s, where it was hopeful, it was about the future, it was about what possibilities existed for humanity as we advanced as a species. And, it wasn't an exercise in post-apocalyptic despair or a political lecture. And I saw less and less of that as the publishing industry became more and more ideologically captured. And so eventually I just sat down, rolled up my sleeves, and said, okay, fine, I'll do it myself. And in the hope, because this is my first novel, in fact, this is launching my career as an author. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had no familiarity with the publishing industry. I just sat down and said, I'm going to write what I want to read, and I hope maybe somebody else might feel the way I do. Well, turns out they did, because things have gone viral, and I'm up for a Prometheus Award, and we're starting the audio book now, and people are talking about bringing it to the screen. I'm working on the sequel, and lots of exciting things are
That's
happening.
very
So,
exciting.
yeah,
My buddy, Mighty Megatron over the chat says, "Nice. Let me pick that up." Yeah, and you can get that at Amazon.com. And I assume you have a website. Looks like DevonEriksen.com. So just
yeah,
spelled exactly like your name, which I have up on the screen as well. Is that your website?
yeah. Yeah, and if people are curious if they're going to like my writing style, there's a 3-chapter sample on the website so they can find out what they're getting into.
For sure. For sure. And if you like the conversation that we had today, then you definitely want to check out more of his tweets over on X. I did link it in the show notes. So if you'd like to follow him over at X, you can do so. Just check me out over at X, and I've got him all linked up over there. His new book, Theft of Fire, not a dystopian hellscape of communist lecturing. It sounds like something more along the lines of Robert Heinlein or some of the other great science fiction novelists of our ideological ilk. Something positive and optimistic, more like Star Trek Next Generation kind of stuff. Devon Eriksen. His website is devoneriksen.com. Anything else you'd like to hit before we go?
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for having me on, and I look forward to seeing the reactions.
I do as well. Best of luck with your book. My brother Justin just DM'd me, says Devon Eriksen is brilliant. He's spot on. He says this is what Glover, another author, was talking about in his book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. We're not mean guys, but we're not nice guys either. We're just no longer going to be pushovers for the feminazis of the world. Devon, thank you very much
We're
for your
not
time.
useful idiots.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. No longer useful idiots. We appreciate you. Come back soon and talk about all your work. And congratulations on the success of your book. Have a great day.